Some of you might remember me last week talking about Nintendo Switch 2 rumors and just how massive some recently these leaks have been. And there's been just a confirmation straight up from President Furukawa the other day on Twitter, confirming that the Switch 2 is in, final development effectively, and shouldn't expect anything, referring to the Switch 2 in a direct in June, but it should be prepared for release by early 2025. And to compound that official statement from the president of Nintendo is a leak coming from people at Family Boards and the user LIC, which dug into some shipping and custom data between Nintendo and Nvidia and other companies. Their findings suggest that the Switch 2 will have 12 gigs of LPDDR5X modules, god, that is a mouthful to say, at 7,500 mega transfers per second, which is crazy fast. Some of the fastest RAM we've seen so far has been, at least in consumer PC arenas and stuff like that, around anywhere between 5,500 to 7,700. Granted, that is faster than what the Switch 2 potentially would have, but that is only on the highest end devices and modules that don't exactly always work properly. So it's super awesome to see 7,500 mega transfers per second be on the Switch 2. To give you an idea, the Steam Deck only has 5,500 mega transfers per second DDR5 RAM, and the ROG Ally has somewhere between like 6,500 or 6,700 mega transfers per second memory. On top of having that much more RAM, it will also have 256 gigs of UFS 3.1 storage, which sounds a lot better than the current Switch's storage, which it is. That is more than double the current Switch internal storage on the OLED. But it is still UFS 3.1, which is functionally an embedded micro SD card. You see this kind of thing all the time on Chromebooks or super cheap laptops. They just have an embedded micro SD card, which, don't get me wrong, they can be very fast, rivaling speeds of SATA SSDs. But generally speaking, they're not the fastest storage option. And think of it as like the original base model Steam Deck 64GB model that used an embedded micro SD card that's just on an M.2 slot. Personally, on the tech side of things, it does disappoint me a little bit that they decided to go with an embedded micro SD card effectively, but it's what it is. It's not going to drastically affect performance in any way, but it just sort of irks me as the technical person that I am. But seeing that extra storage capacity is awesome. Just seeing how large the Nintendo Switch games are getting, it's going to be very important going into the Switch 2 to have these large amounts of internal storage, especially for people, because another rumor in this rumor set has come out and said that it will support, previous generation Nintendo Switch games. And I have a massive library of digital purchases on my Nintendo Switch. So it's going to be awesome to be able to get the Switch 2 and play all my old Switch games on it that I either haven't finished or just simply want to have installed. I currently rock a 1 terabyte micro SD card for my Switch. I only fill about 300 and something gigs of that, but still, it is very important for me to have a large amount of internal storage to allow me to enjoy all my games and keep them downloaded all at once. Because if the past has taught us nothing, is that these gaming storefronts will have just randomly just delist games. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, is a famous example of this. It got taken and delisted off of the Xbox and other sorted Play stores, and it got basically disappeared for almost over a decade, and then it finally came back, and now I own it on my Switch. But I never want that to happen to me, so I want to keep downloaded these games forever. In another case, though very much intentional, the Super Mario 3D All-Stars pack. That was also a game that is now delisted and you can't buy it anymore. Though you can re-download it, that might not be the case for all scenarios. Another leak by Central Leak cited Brazilian streamer known as TVPH, never heard of him before, but they just cited them for a bunch of Nintendo Switch details. First, they're claiming the Switch 2 will launch in May 2025, with more information coming from Nintendo this fall. They also claim that the Switch 2 will also support physical and digital backwards compatibility with the original Switch games. They also have here linked an image of having basically the Nintendo Switch having a 8-inch display and how that would compare to the OLED and something like the Steam Deck, which to me, it looks great. I would love to see an 8-inch Nintendo Switch system because I still rock my original launch Nintendo Switch, and the screen has been a sticking point. It has not aged quite as well as other aspects of the system. I don't know if it being 8 inches would have helped, but it sure as hell would have made me enjoy playing portably a lot more, because I primarily played my Switch for the first 5 years, mostly portably. In other news, the ROG Ally 2 just sort of got announced or confirmed. Asus put out a statement in a podcast basically saying that announcing that they're releasing something called the ROG Ally X, which is functionally, think of it as more like the Steam Deck OLED to the Steam Deck. It's just another revision of this ROG Ally. It just has a refined design, new colorway that's an all black, and will have much better battery life. And they said in the statement that they had no idea how important battery life was going to be for players. And for me, I said in multiple videos, battery life doesn't matter all that much, but as long as it has enough performance to make me not feel that bad that it has a terrible battery life. If the Steam Deck had like 45 minutes worth of battery life and it performed like it did, not worth it. But if it had 45 minutes battery life and it could run games at like 1440p Ultra, then you got my attention. I don't care it has 45 minutes battery life, I will carry around a battery bank. With all that being said, I wouldn't expect any crazy changes, especially considering that it continued to use the same AMD Z1 Extreme chipset and the same 7-inch 48 to 120 Hz VRR screen, which it's not quite the Steam Deck OLED where Valve got to revise the chipset for better battery life and stability and adding a brighter, more gorgeous screen. What Asus does say the new Ally X would have is to, and I quote, should have more than its current 16 gigabytes of RAM so that you can allocate lots of it to the GPU without impacting the rest of the system, which is nice. It should have a longer M.2 2280 SSD slot, which means you can put larger SSDs, not the 3320 ones you could do right now, but full-size SSDs that you can just go anywhere and buy. You don't have to worry about whether or not it would fit or not. Just make sure it's not too big, because I know some of them have NAND packages on the top and bottom. I wouldn't get one of those super thick ones, just like a standard. Think of your standard, SSDs from Team Group, The Ally X should be more repairable with redesigned joysticks that are more interchangeable and upgradable, whatever that means. I imagine if, you could buy a new joystick from Gully Kit like you can for the Steam Deck, that'd be super cool to see. Get some Hall Effect joysticks, but it could just come with Hall Effect joysticks for all we know, so does it really matter all that much? It's just nice to see for repairability's sake. Asus does say that it will be heavier due to having things like a larger battery life, revising the grips, and slightly tuning things like the triggers, the joysticks, and the D-pad. So maybe for people who found the ROG Ally a little uncomfortable to hold for long play sessions, this might be a good time to maybe wait and see if the new Ally X would be more comfortable for you, because I know personally I really like the current Ally purely because it's a more familiar layout compared to something like the Steam Deck, and I actually found it quite comfortable because of that more familiar layout. I'm very excited because there's been so much gaming news recently. I don't typically make gaming news videos. I would love to hear what you guys think down in the comments below. Are you interested in more information about the Switch 2, the Ally X? I would love to hear what you guys think down below. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All the other social media garbage down below, and last but not least, have a nice day.